Welcome to Cancer HealthCast, where science is driving hope. I'm your host, Nikki Henderson. Today we are joined by Dr. Mary Frances Wedekind, who is a pediatric oncologist and assistant research physician with the Pediatric Oncology Branch at the National Cancer Institute. She will be discussing the Rare Cancer Initiative and how it's helping researchers better diagnose rare childhood cancers and develop more effective treatments. She will also be talking about how certain tools are enhancing the way researchers access and analyze data. Hello, Mary Frances. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, Mary Frances, can you start off by telling me about your role at NCI and the overall mission of the Pediatric Oncology Branch?
Yeah, of course. It's a really great question. So as you mentioned, I am a physician in the Pediatric Oncology Branch, which is a part of the Center for Cancer Research within the National Cancer Institute. So within the Pediatric Oncology Branch, we are really dedicated to improving outcomes for children and young adults with cancer and genetic tumor predisposition syndromes. We conduct translational research that spans from the basic sciences, so research that occurs within the laboratory, to then bring those into clinical trials. So these clinical trials can include new and novel treatments, but these trials can also include natural history studies, where we hope to gain a better understanding of certain pediatric cancers or genetic tumor predisposition syndromes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, what is the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative Coordinated Pediatric, Adolescent, and Young Adult Rare Cancer Initiative? And can you outline some of the key objectives?
Of course. I think first I will describe the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or CCDI. So this is an NCI-supported initiative with the foundational goals of gathering patient-level data on every child, adolescent, and young adult, so from the ages of 0 all the way to 39 years of age, that are diagnosed with a childhood cancer, regardless of where they receive care. They will then are integrating standardized and harmonized research and clinical data together to develop a federated database under a common platform so that all those involved with childhood cancer can access data for analysis to then drive additional research on treatments to make impactful differences in outcomes of children with cancer. So now when we look at rare cancers, oftentimes, many of these rare cancers are lacking in adequate knowledge, resources, and community. So through collaboration with all those involved with rare cancers, and not just speaking about the physicians and the researchers, but also involving the patients and the advocates and the families, we are developing a registry to follow patients through time. So this registry will include a collection of standardized data for all rare cancer participants. That includes data from the medical records, such as how they presented with their cancer, the treatments they received, their imaging studies. We will also be collecting patient-reported outcomes, and these are questions that come directly from the patients and or possibly their parents. For our younger patients, we definitely rely a lot on our parents. As patients get older, we can rely on their questions and answers. So we will also, through this initiative, be utilizing the CCDI's Molecular Characterization Initiative for molecular profiling to identify specific gene aberrations that could be implicated in causing the child's cancer, and also that could provide clues for new treatment discovery and development, or looking at the genes of the patient's tumor. All of the data that is collected on this registry and through this Rare Cancer Initiative will then go into the publicly available CCDI data ecosystem. Now, when we look at the key objectives of our registry, the first and foremost is just the feasibility of having a national observational study. We do have additional objectives to longitudinally evaluate the disease courses of our participants for many years, with the goal to collect structured and real-world data that could possibly then be utilized for external controls in future interventional clinical trials, while also providing meaningful comparisons across multiple rare cancer types. Our ultimate goal is to really build an infrastructure and data collection that can be utilized by all those desiring to study a rare cancer to facilitate the discoveries that could hopefully lead to making differences in the lives of these pediatric, adolescent, and young adult patients.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary Frances, for breaking down the different initiatives and highlighting those key objectives. I really appreciate it. Well, how will this initiative help when it comes to better diagnosing rare cancers and improving overall health outcomes for young children?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Nikki. And when we look at our rare cancer patients, the delay in diagnosis for these patients is a true problem, particularly when we look at the delay that this causes in the collaborative discussions that can happen with those that possibly have even some sort of knowledge in that particular rare cancer. Sometimes that knowledge doesn't exist, but if you are already being delayed in your diagnosis, then that ultimately then delays you being able to reach out and seeing if there is knowledge in the rare cancer that you've been diagnosed with. So, for some of these rare cancers, there are many well-established organizations or even physicians with expertise that are able to provide guidance or recommendations. And, as I was just mentioning, unfortunately, for many, there is no expertise that exists currently. There's also an important piece to point out that even sometimes if there are experts, many of the knowledge and recommendations are coming from consensus recommendations, which is better than nothing, but a lot of these are not evidence-based. So through this initiative, we are hopeful that through the enrollment and the extensive data collection and cancer profiling, we will be able to allow for a better understanding of these rare cancers to then facilitate not only an ease in diagnosis, but also for the ability of someone to access the data for analysis that could then hopefully show specific disease signatures or hypothesis for potential therapeutic targets and new drug developments or standards of care.
Okay, perfect. Well, can you talk a little bit about the different types of rare pediatric cancers and how the Rare Cancer Initiative is helping researchers when it comes to developing more effective treatments?
Yeah, so this is, definitely a topic to discuss is, the true definition of a rare cancer, because this really does vary from source to source and who you talk to. Many utilize the NCI definition of less than 150 cases per million per year. However, if we utilize that definition in the pediatric population, then this would include all pediatric cancers. In Europe, there has been a team of investigators in a group that is called the European Cooperative Study Group for Pediatric Rare Cancers, or EXPERT, who further have defined what a rare cancer in the pediatric space is. And they have been using the definition that includes tumors of less than 2 cases per million per year. And this only includes about 11% of pediatric cancers. Now, when we look at that 11%, there are still many different cancers that are included that go from solid tumors to our liquid or hematologic tumors. Some of the examples are adrenocortical carcinoma, chordoma, gastrointestinal stromal tumors, sclerosing epithelial fibrosarcoma, and I could keep going on and on as the list is quite long. And even then, within our pediatric population, sometimes there are cancers that may be slightly more common in the adult population, but when you look at them in children, they are more rare. Finally, you can also look at some of the tumors that there really are no standards of care or clinical trials. And so those are also a tumor that or cancer that are of an unmet need. And then we can look at some of our molecular subtypes of some of those more common pediatric tumors. So when you look at rhabdomyosarcoma, that is one of the more common pediatric tumors, but then there's a specific subtype called MyoD1 mutated rhabdomyosarcoma, and those are exceedingly rare. Now, given the rarity of these tumors, it makes them very hard to study. Many investigators will encounter possibly a handful or even less of these cases in their lifetime, while you need many more than that to really form hypothesis, determine trends, and overall have a better understanding of the natural history of these tumors. So through the Rare Cancer Initiative, we are helping the research community with accessible data in rare cancers with hopefully enough numbers that solid hypothesis can then be derived and then tested. Also, clinical trials are very difficult in the rare cancer space because, as I was mentioning, numbers are very limited. It's not feasible in this patient population to perform the standard randomized control clinical trial that we all know of in the adult world. Thus, in this Rare Cancer Initiative, our other goal is to provide enough patient data that is standardized and of the quality required to deem that data to be utilized as an external control in clinical trials. Thus, this would eliminate the need for a randomized clinical trial and in turn, reduce the numbers of patients needing to be enrolled.
Well, Mary Frances, there is also an observational study that is at the core of this initiative that will follow young children, teens, and young adults with very rare cancers over time. And the data from this study will be tracked with two tools. I think you may have mentioned the registry earlier, the Rare Childhood Cancer Registry and tumor boards. Can you please tell me a little more about these?
Yeah. So looking at this observational study, I did go into a little bit of the details about it, but through this registry, we will be collecting data over time, so over numerous and many years. And as I was mentioning, some of the data we will be collecting from medical records, how patients present with their tumor, what treatments have they been receiving, how are they doing through time, what their imaging studies show, when they relapse, what treatments they received then, how were they diagnosed with that, and then just continuing to follow that and continuing to gather all of that data over many, many years. Now, when we look at the tumor boards, and through this initiative, we're really evaluating how best to utilize existing virtual molecular tumor boards. There are, quite a few throughout the country. And so really through this initiative, trying to evaluate where the biggest need is in that arena. And also, trying to develop a mechanism that we can collect and analyze the data on the impact of those virtual tumor boards. So what that means is the tumor board could give a recommendation. How are those recommendations received by the patients and their clinical team on the patient's treatment, and how are the outcomes related to the specific therapy recommendations?
I know that Data is a very important part of this initiative, as you've been saying throughout our conversation so far. But can you talk a little bit about the process of how researchers will be able to access and analyze the data through the CCDI data ecosystem?
Yes, this is, as you mentioned, a super important part of not only the Rare Cancer Initiative, but all of CCDI is the data. And the wonderful thing through CCDI is that this is available in a de-identified way to the research community. So all of, particularly for this initiative and the other initiatives through CCDI, all of the de-identified standardized clinical data and the genomic data are available to the research community through the CCDI hub. And so you can go to the CCDI website to get access to that hub to then request the data that you would like to then study and analyze.
Okay, perfect. What role does collaboration play when it comes to leveraging programs like the CCDI initiative?
So collaboration is of the utmost importance when we have initiatives like this. It is really through collaboration that so many things are possible. We really have to come together as an entire community to make impactful differences in the lives of these children, adolescents, and young adults with cancer. And in particular, for these rare cancers, where there's already so much knowledge that is lacking and a lot of the resources that are lacking, we have to really all come together to learn from each other, to discuss the problems and the issues, to share data, to make these differences, and really try to have a better understanding of how to move forward for these patients.
Mary Frances, before we conclude, I wanted to ask you, are there any future programs or initiatives that you're excited to talk about?
Yes, through the CCDI, there are so many things that are coming out slowly through the years, and the exciting things that are more on the forefront are the plans for even more extensive genomic and proteomic characterization of the tumor specimens. These will be run on the patients that are currently enrolled on the molecular characterization initiative. And that's the 4,000 plus patients. And then also looking at the longitudinal follow-up of all of those patients and tumor specimens of those patients enrolled on the NCI. I think that we are at a time point that is really exciting, and through the CCDI plans and initiatives, I think that through the collaboration of all of us, that we are in a really exciting time to really make some differences in the pediatric, adolescent, and young adult cancer space.
Yes, that is definitely exciting. Well, I really enjoyed my conversation with you, Mary Frances. Thank you so much for telling us about the Rare Cancer Initiative and how it's helping to improve the health outcomes for so many children. That is really, really great news. And I really want to thank you again for your time. And I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, Nikki. This was so much fun. Thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon as well.
HealthCast, along with GovCast and Cybercast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. To explore our content, visit our website, govciomedia.com. Keep an eye out for new episodes every Tuesday. And if you like what you heard, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. Have a topic you want us to discuss? Contact us at newsletter@govcio.com.